Welcome to the Soul Driven Podcast. I believe that when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. If you are searching for meaning and purpose, if you are unsure about how to combine the spiritual with the everyday, if you are ready to uncover who you truly are, then you've come to the right place. The Soul Driven Podcast is dedicated to exploring the intersection of living a soulful and spiritual life in a driven and ambitious world. Join me for practical guidance, truthful discussions, and interviews with people who are successfully living a soul-driven life. My name is Anna Hendricks, spiritual guide, marketer, and your host. Thank you for being here. Welcome back, folks, to another soul-driven episode. Anna Hendricks here, your spiritual guide and host. So, today it's another solo show, and it's the first of its kind, and I'm really excited to kind of jump into today's show. I'm also very, the truth is that I recorded the intro part of this podcast a couple of times yesterday, and then after doing the reading itself for COVID, I realized coming out of that reading, it was like things need to be done differently. I was guided to not only re-record this intro, but also to cut this reading into two parts so that you wouldn't be overwhelmed, so that it wouldn't be too long, and so that you would really be able to take some time with the information. I haven't even had a chance to personally listen to it all yet, and I want to come to these things like giddy and excited and joyful because that's usually how I am, but I've just finished doing a reading about COVID, and I won't say that it was depressing or heavy necessarily, anything like that. It's just, it was a pretty intense subject, and the records had so much to share about it, and I'm very excited. But before we kind of dive into that, I just want to announce and share with you that this month's Soul Driven Collective workshop is called Reset Your Heart with Paula Rapal. So if you are new to this podcast, the Soul Driven Collective is the Patreon community that I created as an extension of this podcast. It is where we take the conversation offline. I provide tools, resources. You get access to early recordings, to extra recordings, to extra Akashic readings throughout the month instead of just one, a number of different things, a lot of astrology because I'm a nerd, and yeah, it's just a cool place for us to hang out. And so, but every month we put on a different workshop showcasing, highlighting one of the guests that have come onto this podcast. They come in, there's a teaching component and there's an experiential component. It's a very interactive workshop. It's a lot of fun, and there are always practical things that you walk away from these workshops with. So this month for Reset Your Heart with Paula Rapal, first, if you'd like to get to know more about her, I interviewed her in episode 66. You can check out the notes in the show notes to get a direct link to that. But it is episode 66. Paula is someone who I have been working with on and off since late last year, the fall of 2020. And I have such huge appreciation for her work. She is a holistic, intuitive healer, and we've worked together on everything from, health stuff to money mindset, just all kinds of different things. And I was not only excited to have her on the podcast, but then to create a workshop with her. So we put our heads together and realized that the best thing that we could do was really just to kind of go along with the Akashic Record reading for the month titled Tidal Wave. If you haven't listened to that, highly recommend checking it out. And one of the things I really talk about in that episode is about how the energy of August and how this August specifically is really pulling us into a new beginning. It's a new set of energy as we go to this last chunk of the year. And you know how in August, typically, anyways, when the kids start to go back to school, like it's just like things ramp up so fast. And before we know it, the end of the year is here. And in the midst of the Lion's Gate, in the midst of the new moon that fell on the Lion's Gate, plus the double full moon in Aquarius that is happening next week, we have some big energy this month, especially. And it is, again, just really welcoming in new beginnings. My life has completely changed over the last couple of weeks. It's been going through a huge transformation over the past few months, which I'll be sharing with you soon, but it's blowing my mind what is happening in August. And so we really thought that focusing on this theme of new beginnings and specifically the heart, because the heart is what runs us. The heart is our true brain of our body, of our soul, of everything that is going on within us. It's where all of our wisdom resides. It's where things get messy and clunky and clogged up. And so resetting our heart in this workshop, it's going to be this Monday, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link is in the show notes. You can check it out. Paula will be teaching on how to connect with and nurture your heart energy. And then she's also going to go through and do a group healing to just kind of release all of the, it's just going to clear out old beliefs, emotions, programming, whole nine yards. And she's got some really fun activities planned for us, which I'm excited to do. So make sure to check that out. If you are a VIP tiered collective member in the Patreon community, of course, it's free for you to attend. Otherwise, it's $11. And again, the link will be in the show notes. But hope to see you there. I personally and selfishly can't wait. Anything I can do to just kind of like release more through this month is huge. What was really interesting as well is that in the midst of the reading, the records actually talked about that in correlation with COVID. And so releasing this energy, releasing these things that don't fit anymore, these things that are not serving us. I mean, it's just a huge decluttering time. So hope to see you there. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions. Okay, so pulling it back here to this COVID episode, I really felt called to do this episode because of where we're at in the collective right now. If you are new to this podcast or are not, like if you're not, I should say, you've heard me talk about blending the spiritual with the practical. And that is something that's so important to me. I've always been a very spiritual person, but I need it to be applicable in my everyday. Otherwise, it's kind of useless to me. No matter how flowery and cool and wonderful it can be. If it's not providing me true benefit or helping me in some way, then what is the point? And that's very much how I approach and view this podcast and what it is that I share with you. And I just felt called to talk about COVID, but not just to talk about COVID, to go into the records specifically for COVID and get some answers on what it is that's going on right now with COVID, what it is that we have to look forward to, like what it is teaching us, those kinds of things. I created a list of about 7 questions and I wanted to get some clarification. So this is very different from typically me doing just like once a month reading where I channel through a message. This is, I go into the records for COVID. There was a message that came through and then I started asking questions. So it's actually a lot more similar to what it's like in a client reading. And yeah, I think it's about 50 some minutes long. And so what they shared with me when I was coming out of the records was that I needed to break this into 2 episodes. So we will be releasing the second part of this next week. And I really encourage you to sit with this, to really take some time with it, and let whatever it is that comes to you sink in. You know, the records are such a powerful tool when it comes to life and understanding life, and they go right down to the root, to the core of whatever it is that is going on. I haven't ever gone into the records for something like COVID before, so that was very unique. For those who aren't as familiar with the Akashic Records, there is an episode specifically about the Akashic Records that I created a while back. It was a bonus episode. We'll link out to that in the show notes. But suffice it to say that everything is energy. The Akasha is energy. You know, the floor that I'm standing on is energy. The desk that I have in front of me is energy. I'm energy. We're all just vibrating at different frequencies of energy. And the Akasha exists at a very high frequency. It's actually in a different dimension. But anything that has energy, which is everything, has an Akashic record. And that record is of everything that it has experienced, past, present, future, all in this one sort of space. It's kind of like the Google Cloud. Again, if you're new to this. So me going into the records for COVID, it was pretty wild, and I'm not going to talk about that too much, because actually what we're going to be doing here in just a moment is I'm going to be sharing the first part of the reading with you. Next week, you will receive the second part of the reading, and then also just my feedback, my notes, things that were coming through to me in the midst of the reading. When I am channeling through the records, it's always such a multi-dimensional experience, because I'm hearing, seeing, feeling, knowing all things at one time, at different times. And so while I'm channeling through information, I'm also seeing things happening. I'm also getting great understanding about other things. And so I'm going to save that kind of final explanation, integration, whatever you want to call it, part of it for the end of part 2. And yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. So the one thing I will say as well, just real quick here, is that this focuses specifically on COVID. And if you are wanting to know about vaccines, then I highly suggest checking out episode 61. I created an episode just about vaccines, and where I shared from the Akashic Records as well some of the information that had come through some readings that I did for some of my clients who came to me who were very concerned about the vaccine, concerned about how it might affect them, their health, their livelihood, all these different things. And I was really given some beautiful information about what the vaccines are. And so that is in that episode, in addition to my personal experience with vaccines. And, you know, I was very hesitant as well. Plus some resources that just help you to get your mind thinking. I am very much of the mindset that we really need to make these decisions for ourselves these days. And that if you are following a, spiritual teacher or a doctor, whomever it may be, that you take that information, but then you measure it against what it is that you feel inside, that you utilize your own discernment to make a decision for yourself, that you just don't blindly follow someone because you like them and they tell you what to do. That is the one real way to get yourselves in serious trouble, especially these days. We must always be discerning about receiving information from anyone. Be the same with my information. I'm happy. I would, if you completely disagree with me and you're respectful about it, I would high five you, because good. You think for yourself, just like I'm going to do the same for me. When it comes to COVID or vaccine, I really feel like the spiritual community has unfortunately gotten swept up in the tides of fear and has lost their focus. There are plenty within who have not, and I'm so thankful for them. But I would say a lot of the mainstream folks, unfortunately, are just really feeding into the fear because guess what? It's popular, you know? When you think about growing up as a kid, what did people enjoy doing? Gossiping. Why? Because it was like a lot more interesting than not talking about other people. It's the same thing with what is happening right now with COVID and the vaccines. It's a lot more interesting to be like, oh my gosh, it could do this or it could do this versus just like, yeah, it could just help you. It could, it could better you. It could whatever. I think we can utilize that example for anything in life, right? We have a industry that makes billions upon billions of money every year on sick people, but not so much on healthy people, right? We need to take those things into account. So again, if you want to check out more about vaccines, look into that episode. This one's solely focusing on COVID, on the role it's playing, on what we can utilize and rely, or how we can learn from it. You'll see the questions in the show notes, but highly recommend really spending some time with this one and next week as well. Be sure to hit me up on social media at Soul Driven Podcast or send me an email, souldrivenpodcast@gmail.com. After listening, I'd love to hear how it resonates with you, what pops out for you, and I guess just a final FYI that for those who come to this podcast later in time, not to worry, because time doesn't exist outside of our planet. It is a human construct. The Akashic Records are alive forever and always. And so if you find yourself here, whether it's a month down the road, a year down the road, 5 years down the road, there's something important for you here. So don't be concerned about the date that is attached to this podcast. All right. I'm going to go ahead and let us jump in to the reading. Enjoy, and I will see you next week.
There's a wind about you. It flushes from your left to your right. It breathes its way across your head, down the backside of your body, making its way through to the front and encircling you from every area. It is this breath, this fire that awakens you. It beckons you forward. It calls to you to stand still. It says, "Do you see me standing in front of you? Do you know what it is that I am capable of? Will you retreat, go run and hide? Or will you stand strong, declare your ability to come forward, to move in any direction that you would like, or to become something that you haven't been before?" This is what this is all about. It is the greatest undoing that has ever been done, simply because it is time. The earth beneath you is beginning to break, crack wide open from the sheer weight of the insanity that lives upon it. It can no longer pretend to look in the other direction either. For it is clear that its inhabitants have not been able to come to terms with themselves or all that life has to offer them. No. Instead, they take, pillage, rape, breed unhealthy lives upon each other. Take and take and take. That is all that it is that we can see around us. This taking with nothing left in return. From whom or what it was taken. Therefore, this shift comes forward in a steady light. It will unearth all that needs to go. It will shaken and awaken. It will call us to ourselves. It will beckon. What it is that has always been there. So that once again the choice might be given. There is so much here. It is not just one thing. And we certainly do not wish for you to become overcome by all that is happening at this time. But know that what is happening must happen. For there is a great rebalancing taking place. A shift back towards what should be at the very heart of this planet. A deep understanding, a knowing that each and every one of you is the same, deserves the same, is equally impacted by the actions of one. You all suffer together when one suffers. You all ache when one aches. There is no separation. Thank you, masters, teachers, loved ones. I'm here to gain a better understanding of COVID. And this is where I would like to start. What is the virus that we call COVID-19? The virus that you call COVID-19 is an awakening. It is a shakeup of the nth degree. It is one that will keep coming in waves until it has worked its magic. until it has released, unburdened, and decodified that which is not working in your world. It is here to clarify for you what is truly important. It is the making of the greatest undoing that has ever been done. For truly at this time, humans as a whole are more awake, present, aware than they have ever been. They know and understand the outcome of their actions, yet they take place anyway. They choose to step over others to get to what it is that they want. They choose to push some aside while wrapping their arms around others. Choices have been made, time and again, to disrespect one another, to take advantage, not only of the humans of this earth, but of all the things that the earth wishes to give to her inhabitants. The minds, the food, the animals. Yes, it has all been raped and pillaged. It has all been taken for granted. It has all been forgotten. And even now, as this beautiful earth is on the brink of destruction, humans still choose to look the other way, turn their cheek. Please understand that this is part of the human mentality. For at your very core, there is pain. Pain of all kinds, abandonment, rejection, not being loved. And from this pain produces more pain, more death, more destruction. It is not because you are inherently bad. No, that isn't the case at all. It is simply because this is the human predicament. To try to learn a life, to try to learn to live a life without being connected to source, to something greater. The fool's journey. COVID is here to merge the two together, to reintroduce you to yourselves, to put the cap back on the head, to say, wake up, gentle soul. What was it that you came here to do? How is it that you can step forward and give to your mankind? How can you be of service? This is the endeavor of this disease. It is also here to unburden the earth of those who do not wish to be here. For whether they realize it or not, even if it is on an unconscious level, those who find death through the arms of COVID do so to be unburdened, to be set free, free from the heaviness of this planet, free from the burdens of life. It is what their souls chose to do long before this planet had ever heard of COVID. Their deaths allow for more space for the light to make its way through. For of course, humans must be jostled, hit across the head in order to take notice of what it is that is happening around them. Do you think we would really be here at this time and place in history if humans had learned how to live in harmony with one another, with the planet Earth, with the animals, with the life that is around at all times? Of course not. COVID came through its inception because it was needed, called upon by the souls of those who wish to rise, to be awakened, to be reborn. COVID is not man-made, and yet it is. What does that mean, that COVID is not man-made? And yet it is. It means that this virus did not come from the universe. Man so often thinks that we are playing games, that we are forcing down harm, when they do not do as we wish. Yet we wish nothing. Of course, we want to see your planet living in harmony. Knowing that for every action, there is a reaction. But it is not our place to interfere. Nor would we ever unleash something like COVID upon the planet. That is not our place. Only you are capable of this. When we say that COVID is not man-made, and yet it is because of what we alluded to before. That the very souls of mankind have been calling out to be awakened, shook, held in place so that their eyes might see what it is that is taking place around them. In this and through the collective need, the crying out of nature, the devastation of your forests, the mutilation and abuse of your animals, the discrepancies between your races, the ways in which hierarchy finds its place so easily upon man. COVID came forward. And was created from all the pain that sits upon the planet, that wishes to be rejuvenated and reborn. For truly everything that comes forward is simply wishing to right a wrong, to rebalance a system, to make things level and even again. Therefore, it was your collective unconsciousness, the actions that have taken place, the decisions that have been made, that welcomed COVID into being. Thank you. Masters, teachers, loved ones, what lessons are we meant to be learning during this time? This is a time for remembering. It is a time for taking stock of all that is happening around you. You see the rain, you see the floods, you see the fires, you see the great pain of fallen nations. And yet, what is it that you do? Do you close your heart off from the suffering of mankind, do you turn your cheek? Or are you beginning to realize that you will never be able to live on a planet that breeds so much hate? So much so that it is time you actually do something. That it is time you begin living a new way. Taking on a new rhythm to your everyday. Perhaps learning how to be more present with those you love. Listening to their words, their wants, their needs. Spending and taking time for yourself. Learning how to connect within to the great wisdom that resides within you. Learning to turn off the chaos and the noise that solely wishes to distract you from learning how to take your place in this world. For each and every one of you has brought a bountiful gift into this life. And if you are here on this planet at this time, it is because you have chosen so. It is because you have said you wanted the opportunity to try and turn things around. Yet this planet is heavy. It seeks to depress you all. You must learn to rise above it. You must learn to see what it is in front of you that really matters. Mankind, this planet, the beautiful animals. You do not understand all the galaxies and worlds who are so envious of the planet upon which you reside. You have no idea what gift you have been given, what it is to be human, to feel, to learn, to experience, to grow, to blend your bodies with one another. There is so much richness here, and yet you bypass all of it. Why is it that something so devastating must take place on your planet for you to begin noticing what it is that's in front of you? Take the time to know, experience, feel, taste, and touch. Decide for yourselves how it is that you can give back, the change that you can make. For COVID is here to truly wake you up, to shake you back into awareness, of all that you have been given. You must help one another. But first, you must help yourselves. COVID is not here to desolate. It is not here to take lives that did not want to or choose to go ahead of time. For even as their lives raise into the heavens, it brings about an increase in the vibration of this planet. For this planet is changing, reshaping. It too is purging that which does not belong, to make space for that and those who would love and appreciate her, love and appreciate one another. This is a great shift. And yes, it is happening through the lens of COVID. COVID will one day be seen as a gift. And we know how blasphemous that sounds at this point in time. But we also know it is to come.